I've been running for 20 years and have only spent about 2 months of that injured. Let's talk about how I've managed this, what I think are the most important things for avoiding injury, and at the end I'll talk through some things that I think are massively overrated when it comes to injury prevention, and hopefully you're able to take some good tips into an injury-free 2025. The first and most important thing for injury prevention is sleep and recovery. There is absolutely no substitute for good sleep, and you have to be prioritising that as much as you can. I personally aim for about 9 hours a night, and I'll also try to fit in a nap if I have a double run planned or if I'm just feeling a bit more tired than usual. I am by no means a sleep expert, but there's a few things that I've found really help maximise my sleep, and these are avoiding screens in bed, wearing an eye mask and earplugs, and only having one coffee per day first thing in the morning. I have not been following my own advice on this in the past few weeks, and my Garmin body battery knows about it. Another thing that the body battery is really punishing me on recently is having alcohol. If you really want to get the best sleep possible and make sure that you're really recovering when sleeping, you have to be cutting out alcohol. And this is especially important in heavy training blocks when the recovery is really key. Try wearing your watch to bed and see what the sleep numbers are. Don't obsess over this, but I think if you do it for a long enough period of time, your watch will have good enough data on you that you can compare it and see when you're sleeping better, see when you're not sleeping great, and trying to cut out the things that really tank your sleep numbers when you can. Sticking with things that are done outside of running, let's talk about nutrition. What you put in your body and how you fuel yourself is going to have a massive impact on how robust your body is and also how you're recovering. You have to be eating the right things and you have to be eating enough. Any limiting of food intake is going to increase your risk of injury. Your body needs to recover from exercise, and it can start this process really quickly if you're getting some good protein down you as quickly as possible after training. If you aren't at home, try protein bars, protein shakes, or chocolate milk. But if you are at home, I think it's better to eat real foods as much as you can. I usually do my hardest training in the morning, so I'm using lunch as my protein source, and I tend to go for something basic like eggs or tuna or maybe salmon for my protein. I'm pretty sure that a lack of good nutrition and good sleep was what really set off my most recent and biggest injury to date. I got a glute med tendon injury that was sort of nagging me before I went on a drunken all-inclusive family holiday. And once I came back from this holiday, it was pretty much beyond help. This isn't me telling you that you're never allowed to have fun, but maybe don't try and do every bit of training that you would do at home when you're recovering well. And this is especially important if, like me in this one case, you were already carrying a niggle. Next up is something that my running friends and maybe even people who watch these videos wish I would shut up about, is strength training. Strength training is massively important for injury prevention. I would honestly say that this is the major difference between me and the people around me who are really quite injury prone. I've been going to the gym twice a week, probably 48 weeks of the year for about 13 years. I think I started going to the gym when I was about 15 and just haven't stopped since. Unless I'm tapering or recovering from a big race, I'm going to the gym twice a week, every week, and I have been since I was about 15. Strength training is a completely non-negotiable for me, and along with twice a week where I go to the gym and lift heavy, I also have twice a week where I do bodyweight exercises in the house. So really I'm doing 4 strength sessions a week and working the same muscles but just in a slightly different way. I can say with pretty good certainty that weak calves are what caused my first ever injury. I had plantar fasciitis in 2017, and at this point I just don't think I was educated enough on strength training. I was doing it, but maybe wasn't lifting that heavy and I wasn't focusing on single leg work. Your calves take a lot of load when you're running, and they both do it individually. So lift heavy, prioritise single leg, just strengthen your calves and also everything else in your lower body. Let's move on to some actual running decisions that you can make to massively reduce your risk of injury. The first is not making any drastic changes to your training. When I say this, I'm not just talking about your weekly mileage like most people would be in this case. And if I'm honest, I think the don't increase your weekly mileage by more than 10% is far too general to be considered good training advice. If you're a new runner and you increase your weekly mileage by 10% every week, you're going to be injured in about a month. So, what do I mean when I say don't make any drastic changes to your training? Well, I think this applies to everything in training. For example, don't start doing fast track sessions in spikes when you've only ever been marathon training. Don't go from running on a flat canal to running up and down your local hills. And going back to the last point on strength training, don't go and try and squat 100 kilos your first time in the gym. Your body does not like big changes, and you're going to end up injured if you try and make any drastic changes. Just build up to everything gradually, know where you want to get to, and try to get there by just changing little things every week. It's also very important to make sure that you're warmed up properly, especially before a hard session where you're going to be running quickly. If you are doing a hard session, make sure you're at very least doing a warm up jog. I personally follow up my warm up jog with some running that's quite a bit closer to session pace. I'll do a bit of a threshold and I'll do some faster strides before moving into some dynamic stretches. This is like a 45-minute process, and I'm not suggesting that everyone has to do this, but even just a 5 to 10 minute jog before you start running really quick is going to greatly reduce your chance of injury. If I was recording this video a few years ago, I would have probably put warm downs on an equal pedestal with warm ups. However, I've seen far too many people who just don't do warm downs anymore. They just finish the session and they immediately go home and recover, that I really can't claim that they're equal. I still warm down. I'll still do a 2 mile jog after almost every session. And I think it's a good habit to get into. Even just a couple of minutes jog is hopefully going to help you feel better the next day. Again, based on what I've seen, I'm not sure of the scientific evidence behind this anymore, but it's always been drummed into me. Do a warm down after you finish training, and worst case, it's some extra mileage. The next thing that I think is important is running shoes. Wear a good pair of running shoes and replace them often. Generally, the absolute max that you should be getting out your running shoes is about 500 miles. Now, this is for actual mileage shoes. I use ASICS GT 2000s and I do get about 500 miles out of them, but you're highly unlikely to get 500 miles out of your fancy carbons that you race in, so don't try to, and replace them as often as you can. You'll probably find that your body gives you some warning signs when your shoes need to be replaced. For me, both my Achilles start to grumble, sometimes my plantar gets a little bit sore, but as soon as I replace the shoes, these issues go away instantly. Just don't risk it. Update your shoes. Check the outlets for last year's colours. You might be able to get them cheaper, which hopefully will help you replace them more often. Also, since I had my plantar fasciitis in 2017, I've worn Superfeet insoles in all my shoes. I don't wear them in my race shoes because they don't fit, but if permanently wearing insoles is going to keep you uninjured, then I don't think there's any issues with that. I'll put a link to the insoles that I use in the description and you can check them out, and hopefully they can help a few of you stay uninjured. If you still have any money left over from replacing your shoes every 500 miles and buying insoles, then I would recommend paying for a good sports massage. I'm not suggesting that you do this all the time, but every 4 to 6 weeks or just before a big goal race should really help keep on top of any tightness, make sure everything's feeling good. And I personally just don't think that there's any substitute for a good deep massage. I've shifted so many niggles and sometimes just maintained an acceptable level of niggle until I've got to the goal race through getting massage. And there's definitely some start lines that I would not have made if I wasn't getting a massage on it almost every week. One more general tip for injury prevention that I want to give before we move into things that are overrated is recognise early warning signs. I'm probably not the most qualified to give this advice. A few years ago, I tried to race a 10k when I wasn't able to stand on one leg. But if you have a niggle that's been bugging you for a while, or tightness that seems to be there on every run, don't be scared to take a day off. Don't be scared to book a massage or jump on the cross trainer for a few days. Missing a few days of training with something that you wouldn't necessarily have to miss a few days of training with is much better than missing a few weeks or a few months further down the line. You just have to know your body. You have to know what's nothing and what might actually come to something. Recognize the difference and make the right decision for you and for the specific niggle that you're feeling. Unfortunately, this only comes really with experience, but just try to make good decisions here. When it comes to injury prevention time wasters, I'm going to unfortunately say static stretching and rolling. I think that rolling is good when you've got a very specific area of tightness that you just need to get into and loosen off a little bit. But if you're doing it every day along with stretching, I just don't think it's useful at all. I think your time would be much better spent running more, doing more strength training, or just recovering, having a bath or something. I spent a good amount of time on training camp with Olympians and genuinely cannot recall a time where I seen any of them stretch or roll. So for me, that's enough data to suggest that it's not worth my time. I don't do it ever. I do dynamic stretches before training, just a couple of drills and stuff, and that's it. I never stretch in the house. I can't remember the last time I rolled. Probably the last time I had any sort of tightness, which was a lot of months ago from what I can remember. I don't know what else to say on this point. Just prioritize the things that are actually going to help, which is the training, the strength work, and the recovery. And I think that's pretty much it. I hope that you have a successful and injury-free 2025 and that this video contributes at least a little bit to that. Subscribe if you got any value from this video and I'll do my best to keep providing it in the future. Cheers!